Good morning. Is everyone well caffeinated? The last day of the conference? I don't know how about you, but I'm kind of already looking forward to the weekend and relaxing a little bit. Back-to-back meetings. Need to give a bit of a rest to the brain and to the voice. But before we go, we have a fantastic session today. So luxury or ultra-luxury can mean different things to different people. To some, it's about gold taps, marble everything, central location, bed is big, where you have to text your partner to say goodnight. Just ask Rihanna, she had the whole song about it. And to other people, it could be a chic villa in a very remote destination. Of course, carbon neutral, with luxury caviar facials, dog groomers, private chefs, curated playlist, and optimized sleeping program. But can those things really create that je ne sais quoi moment and make feel guests really special? That's the crux of our discussion today. And who better than a panel of 3 industry titans who are going to share their expertise, falling basically on their extensive experience in the luxury field. So I'd like to welcome my panel today. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce Barbara Muckermann. She is the CEO of Kempinski Group with more than 25 years in luxury hospitality. She previously headed Silver Sea Cruises and held leadership roles at Loro Piana, MSC Cruises, and NCL. Barbara is the first woman to lead Kempinski, and she has a wealth of experience in marketing, building brands, running operations, and leaving companies stronger. As a custodian of Kempinski brand, she wants to remind everyone what European luxury heritage is, why it's so strong and unforgettable. Next to Barbara is Anant. He's the founder and CEO of Matter of Form, a consultancy specializing in brand strategy, customer experience, and digital innovation, working with luxury brands. And over the past 14 years, he has led transformative work for global clients by bridging creative thinking with commercial impact. He's a passionate advocate for behavioral design and meritocratic culture. He also co-owns the design school, Experience House, and lectures in branding and innovation at EHL. Anand also hosts the What the Lux podcast. So I urge everyone to download that one. And Peter Hechler here is Senior Vice President and Head of Regional Operations at EMEAA, Banyan Holdings. Peter was born into a hotel-owning family and started his professional career in the culinary field, obtaining a Master of Culinary Arts. In 2004, he joined Banyan Tree and over time took new challenges, developing an impressive career within the business. So it's fair to say that Peter also has had a very close look into many aspects of luxury hospitality firsthand, and done that in Germany, Monaco, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Brazil, China, Panama, and Mexico. You can now see why I need notes. Okay, so we can start perhaps with Anand, actually. When we think about the high net worth travelers today, how do we need to think about them as travelers? What experiences, expectations they have? Can you talk about how do you envisage the luxury traveler of today?
Yeah, sure. I think the thing about luxury is that it's quite a loose term. Luxury seeks to target the high net worth, but the high net worth is not one thing. It's not one person, and too often it ends up this sort of like homogenous slop of expectations that we think the high net worth has. We are more flexible today as high net worth travelers than ever before. We're more exposed to a world of experiences. We, live in our kids' TikTok channels. We go backpacking one year and stay at Oman resorts the next. We are far more fluid in our identities than we perhaps once were, and we identify with different tribes in different moments. maybe this sounds like a little bit of a cliched thing to say, but it's incredibly important not to think about demographics, but rather to think about psychographics. What are the things that drive people to do the things they want to do, and how can we innovate around the emotional hypothesis? How do we want to make them feel when they embark on a luxury journey with us? So I think that's a really important consideration. Luxury is just not one thing. It's changed dramatically, and we're more exposed to more channels than ever before.
And Barbara, you actually worked in cruise. You work now in hotel hospitality. Do you think there are certain core expectations that transcend the different sectors, and are there differences to what people want, what people expect? Because I imagine if you go on a luxury cruise and you're a high net worth individual and you want adventure and exploration, maybe that's a little bit different to going for a relaxed holiday in a nice resort. Or is it all of those personalities rolled into one, like Anant mentioned, sort of the portfolio of different kinds of us, depending on how we feel?
Thank you, Eva. And thank you for not having used the word veteran, which at a certain point becomes a little stale in conferences. I would go back to what is luxury to answer your question, because I fully agree with Anand. It's about psychographic, it's not about demographic, and it is about a very varied landscape. But actually, at the real core, if it's functional, it's not luxury. So if any object, be an offering a luxury cruise line, or a beautiful piece of retail, or an incredible hotel experience, is only fulfilling the functional needs of the customer, it's not luxury. Because nobody will pay more for something that does the same thing. So if we take the bag of any supermarket around the world, it will be 4 dinars in Dubai, it will be $1 in the US, it is a very sturdy bag, you can reuse it, if it breaks you bring it back and they change it. Or you can wait 2 years, bag in 7 different languages, and maybe get a $15,000 Birkin bag. The $14,999 between the two is the emotional value of the object, and that's luxury. So if we now move towards travel, of course, if the hotel industry keeps trying... Thank you. If the hotel industry keeps trying to sell beds, we're not selling luxury. And this is why we need to think, what is that unicity of the hotel experience that is luxury? Not every hotel is luxury. We might call them luxury, but if the only thing I'm doing is getting in, checking in, getting a great bed and checking out, that's not necessarily luxury. And this is where there's similarity in the cruise industries. There's a lot of cruises who will get you somewhere, but not necessarily offering a luxury product.
That's super interesting. I think what you say, it's not just the where and the what, right? But like that luxury experience comes from a little bit of the how as well. So Peter, that's probably quite a nightmare for someone in operations, because they need to think about the evolving needs of the luxury customer, and then to also consider like how do they create those special moments. How do you operationalize this? How do you, like, what are the challenges? Speak to us.
Well, everybody who is here, all think is luxury. And of course, it's a given to have the best bed, the best room, a lot of space. But luxury is a feeling, and everybody is different. And you need to entice people, especially with your brands, what you stand for. And I think it's not new. It's now more exposed, and a lot of things which are now on social media, on TikTok, is exposed as luxury, is mainstream. So, a lot of things which is now called luxury is actually transactional. And I think companies in the luxury sector need to see, first of all, the basis has to be right, but also which location you want to pick, which products you want to provide, which services you want to give, because everybody does the same after a while. And when you have a good product or a good concept somewhere and you see that it is actually copied, you do something good and you have to directly change it. And I think the luxury stuff, from a nice bag to a big car, affluent customers don't care. What they care is the emotional attachment to a moment, to a place, to certain times with your family, your friends, which is bigger than anything else. So it's a very intentional product in our world. Where we come from, Banyan Tree has that. We have done this since 30 years. I mean, we are 30 years doing this. And there was a lot of things always been asked. It's not about how much money we can make. It's what does the customer get out of it on an emotional level? I think that's the thing.
That's amazing. And sorry, just a follow-up question on that, actually. So, do you tell your staff that they need to hire the right people, that they need to train those people in the appropriate way? Is sort of the staffing then becomes the challenge to create that experience?
Absolutely. I mean, again, Banyan Tree comes from the Asian hospitality side. A Singapore-based company, first hotels in Thailand, and then we have ventured out. And again, what we did, we used our Asian hospitality and merged it with the local client, talent. And usually we try to hire people with no experience because we want people to experience what the guests are doing. And then you don't copy-paste. It's the same like we're not trying to have a front desk person and a concierge and you have a resort host. Takes care of everything. It's a very old concept. We do this still. And again, when your staff knows the guest and the staff almost becomes part of the family for a moment. From the beginning, from the arrival to the departure, and a nice note afterwards. It's priceless. And people don't care about the super fancy caviar stuff. I mean, Dubai is the place where you can have everything. People care about these emotional connections, where you can remember, oh, I did this with my kids, or I did this with my friends. And you can't repeat this. That's the other thing. You just cannot repeat that. So.
Anand, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to, I was going to say something different, but just to build on your last point, actually, now that you've mentioned it, about this desire to connect with our environment, to connect with ourselves, and to connect with those around us. I think luxury plays a really important role in this over-optimized world that we live in today, and that is to give people an excuse to take the slower path, right? To become aware of their environment and their felt experience. And I think luxury is like taking that role. Luxury, if we use the term luxury, luxury has become actually a mid-market term in many ways. It's become a search term. It's become a way of qualifying out cheap things, but that's another conversation. You know, it's what we're really looking for is like well, we can Uber ourselves to wherever we want to go. We can Uber our food into our home. You know, we have stripped the serendipitous interactions out of everyday life, and luxury gives us a reason, you know, to really enjoy an environment. And I think that's incredibly important because, you know, in the world of experience design and hospitality experience design, we can somehow fall into this trap of trying to keep up with the Joneses, to use technology, to use marketing or brand as a way of selling more, but we need to have the confidence to introduce a level of healthy friction into the experience, because that's where value is born, and it's really in the detail and the nuance. And that's also important. This market is growing. You know, with growth comes noise and homogenization. You know, when I'm trying to book an experience, I look at the quality of the light switch or the type of flooring in the photos or the little cultural artifacts that give me a sense of how the whole experience is designed, not the color of the sea. That's table stakes. But too often we rest on the laurels of the vista or frankly, the tropes that exist in luxury that the high net worth is desensitized to. You know, we're bombarded with 100 browser tabs when we're trying to book an experience, and the journey, how the whole thing plays out, it begins there in the browser, in that two-dimensional setting that eventually leads you into a sensorial three-dimensional world, four-dimensional experience.
So actually developing on that, let's say, are there tick boxes that you need to tick? Like, let's say, what are the top 3 things that you think about that a brand needs to tick when they design for luxury experiences to their guests?
Okay, like how I think about it is, what is the brand promise? What is the aspect of the prospective customer's personality that you're attempting to target? You know, I am many things. You know, in certain moments I desire solitude, in others I desire cultural immersion and education, in others I desire a level of hedonism. You know, we all want different degrees of all of these things. So what is the promise you're making, firstly? And then how does that play out across the choreography of the experience? I was talking about it as the choreography. It's a dance that you lead your guests through. And value and innovation and luxury, it's not the headline, it's not the thread count, it's not that thing that you can say, it's the sequence of how the whole experience connects together. And you know, that is ultimately together, that symphony of interactions, that symphony of touch points. When they come together, that's the true luxury is something that is difficult to pinpoint, you know, in a pithy sentence. It's having the confidence to join together those subtle moments. The other thing, you asked for three things, so my third thing is, you know, I feel at times luxury can be quite a timid industry. You know, we have great product, you know, we think that luxury customers want a certain design style and require a certain language. The language can be quite ethereal. You know, I think now is the time for creative confidence, for a level of wit, for a, you know, to just basically upend some of the semiotics that exist in the category. The category is full of terrible generics. The same language, you know, the same types of imagery, and you know, that has become table stakes. You know,
so
I
you're
think we
looking
need
for
to focus,
meaningful differentiation, right?
we need to focus on like the visceral. You know, what's the like personal transformation someone's going to go through when they engage in our luxury experience? How can we depict that in a way that's suggestive, rather than, you know, showing everything all in one place?
Actually, speaking about unique luxury experiences and creating them, enabling them, I believe Barbara has a really lovely story to tell, an example to give. When we spoke, I really enjoyed it. It's actually from the cruise industry, but I loved how the brand created a really authentic, unique experience. Maybe you could tell the story?
Thank you, Eva. You know, building on what Anand says, you need to stand for something. So you need to be able to look at the consumer in the eyes and look at the world and say, this is what we are, this is what you will get. And in terms of how can travel companies enable luxury, it's always contextual. Because as Peter was saying, in Dubai you can have anything you want. But that's why I really cherish the time that I've done product development in some of the harshest conditions in the world, like Antarctica, because in Antarctica you cannot find all of the things that are available. And so luxury becomes contextual. And thinking about how sometimes, you know, luxury will enable a specific experience. There was a moment in which I realized how you need to understand what the consumer will need at a specific time and point. When I was at the christening event at the inaugural season of the Silver Endeavour, which was our polar ship, the most luxurious and most expensive polar ship ever built, we went kayaking in Antarctica. Kayaking in Antarctica is an experience that is absolutely unique, and less than 1 million people in the world have gone to Antarctica. Forget the ones that have been kayaking. And that's where you realize what is luxury. Because at the beginning of the season, you have a lot of what's called the fast ice in Antarctica. So we were there with our 4 kayaks going through the ice, and the ice were getting harder and harder. Now, kayaking through the ice is really hard. And so the expedition leader called the bridge, and thanks to the very expensive azipods that the ship was using, the ship just, you know, moved a little bit, created a lake, so that the kayaks went through and safely arrived in the hands of the butlers that were offered hot chocolate. That is the contextual luxury. And the cost of that electronical gimmick was millions of dollars. And you can ask, why do you need it? Well, because that's the ultimate kayaking experience in ice.
Amazing, right? I mean, I think we all would like a little bit of breeze when we're waiting for the taxi outside the halls. But Peter, if you're not planning on opening a new hotel in Antarctica, how do you use design and location to sort of create a sense of place and I suppose that emotional depth in the guest journey?
Yeah, if you don't mind, we just did the opening in Bali, in the middle of a rice paddy. 20 villas, massively designed with a pool, sense of place, sense of space, indulge all the senses. But we have no walls. So, challenge accepted as a traveler, right? And so people are being allured to it, but are also a bit afraid. How does that work? Privacy, no problem because you have all the distances of the world. But then what happened with the insects, what happened with lizards or whatever. And again, there is a design of curtains which are so heavy that nothing can enter. But again, in the morning you press a button and things are opening and you are by yourself. So you have a luxury which actually nobody can share. On top, we stopped doing the restaurant and the this and the that. Everything is fluent. Okay, these are smaller properties. You can really immerse in the details. Usually we know exactly what the guest likes in terms of food. We are preparing the sustainable part of it, homegrown, have made sure that also the chefs are trained from this area. And, sometimes it's a challenge because the guests come with the expectation, but also with a bit of fear. And then they go home and say, wow, this is something once of a lifetime. So.
And actually, because you mentioned food, and we had a great discussion with you before about food, and even though it's not necessarily, well, it's kind of part of the experience as well, isn't it? It's very important for us to go somewhere and ensure that we have an amazing, culinary experience. But it's so difficult to decide, how am I going to run the F&B when I have perhaps clients from all over? So you mentioned you opened in Bali, so you'll have clients from the US as well as from China, as well as from India, from Europe. We Indian travelers are mostly vegetarian. Chinese travelers probably prefer their own culinary choices, compared to sort of other guests, European, Americans, etc. How do you decide what that's going to look like? How do you still maintain the local flavors, I guess, to create that local experience?
I do believe, and again, also speaks for what happened in our properties, is that the traveler is pretty well traveled. He knows things, and they like to experience things in all generations. And it's not that difficult. Of course, you need to have the dietary requests, and you need to make sure that it's catered for, which is a standard in our industry. And you need to make sure also you have the certain goodies which people like. And then you bring them in, and you have them on the side. But you don't force it on them. You actually wait until they ask for it. But also you still have to literally present the local culture. Especially in that really small luxury segment where we are working in.
If I can, I would actually add something to what Peter was saying, and it's absolutely fascinating, the concept. I think that as travel companies, we also have the need of also becoming a little bit the translators for these visitors that are coming to the countries. So we see that the consumer has shifted enormously in the last 20 years. And today, they really want to immerse themselves into the destination. Now, everybody's a little bit afraid of immersing itself into something I don't know. So it is a role of the hotel company also to explain, oh, you should really try this spice because it's a spice that you can only find in Bali, and these are the properties, and this is what you will experience. Because there is a role of a translator that I think also increases the experience, because if we understand something, we appreciate it more. Otherwise, we look at something like, what is that?
Yeah.
And if you can be the catalyst to help people do things that they might not otherwise have done, it will develop a level of loyalty and you put your brand at the center of that value exchange. ultimately, the connection, you'll be at the center of that connection and that experience. It's really important.
You mentioned loyalty, actually, Anant. Shall we
Yeah.
stay on that point? When you work with various different brands, what do you see things that actually move the dial on the
Sure.
loyalty and help to bring the guests back to the brand?
We do a fair bit in loyalty. We actually helped launch Mandarin Oriental's new loyalty program yesterday. And worked with LVMH and Belmont for an extended period of time to define a loyalty strategy that would bridge products and experiences. And when we were doing that last piece of work, we did quite a fascinating study into cults, which was, this is pretty left field, to be honest, but there were some really interesting things that came out of it. I won't bore you with the details of it, but there's sort of three key things that are important in loyalty. The first is to have a human figure, to bring the human figure back into the story, right? And we found this when we were working with Oman Resorts years ago. There were, an unofficial group of Oman loyalists, the Oman Junkies. I'm sure most people have, heard of that, band of people who were enthusiastic about the group, but they really saw themselves as like an extension of Adrian Zecker's friendship group. That figurehead was really important. So inviting people into a club and making the person who sits at the center of that brand more of a figurehead is important. The second is social proof. Now, when people talk about social proof, they think about social media and other people seemingly doing things quite visually that they might be able to relate to. Social proof is subtle. I just want to give you a quick example of how social proof was used to encourage towel reusage in the hotel industry. A major group, I won't name them, ran an experiment to get people to reuse towels for environmental reasons. And they ran a message saying, please reuse your towels for environmental reasons. Don't quote me on the numbers, but like 10% of people reused the towels. They then ran another message that just said most people reuse towels. There was a 12% increase on that 10%. It was a social proofed message. And the third message then introduced immediacy into the content as well. Most people in this room reuse their towels, was another 10%. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, right? So the point here is that thinking about behavioral copy that makes people feel that they have a sense of belonging, that's super important. And the third point is about having the confidence to get people to do something. Right? Too often with loyalty, we're rewarding existing behaviors rather than encouraging new behaviors. Right? It's why Ennismore's disloyalty program is successful, right? It gets people to pay and then visit new hotels, which is great for them and great for the guest. Now, there's a little anecdote that I love, and it's from Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin once said, if you want people to like you, get them to do you a favor. They'll post-rationalize, they must have liked you enough to have done you the favor. But people basically like to ensure that there's a congruence between their thoughts, beliefs, and their actions. Often, we're trying to influence people's thoughts to try and get them to do something. Get them to do something first, and they'll create a belief system that supports their action. Right, so these three things are very, very important in loyalty. And I just want to re-emphasize a point I made when talking about those 3 points, and that is don't reward existing behavior. Too much loyalty is transactional. It commoditizes not just the loyalty, but everything about your experience. You want to aim to create irrational loyalty by making yourself incomparable. And yes, having those little like surprise and delight moments and empowering staff on the front line to autonomously do things that feel personal and that feel human and that feel impulsive. I recently had Robin Shadow, who was the head of brand and childhood friend on our podcast, What the Lux, and Citizen M just sold to Marriott for $400 million. So I reshared the podcast because it was fascinating. The guys had a red button, and this is like not the type of brand that you would associate with service, like high-touch service. It's quite self-service. The staff would still have like a red button they could essentially push that gave them, options for how they could delight their guests in much the same way that you might receive free coffee at Pret, and that's left up to the server rather than overly operationalized.
Yeah. Peter, how do you think about loyalty? What is the strategy for Banyan Tree when it comes to retaining guests?
One more time, it's like Mandarin or Amman. Even we have the same thing. We have really loyal customers because they know what they what they can expect. And for example, one of the issues in Banyan Tree is sustainability was from day one in our DNA instilled in our company. And we're trying to make sure that certain things has been done. Either you use a abandoned tin mine and make them reusable, or you go into destinations where you have very low impact in terms of building. We just opened a wine resort in Baja California on the Mexican side near Ensenada, and we worked with the owner, and we decided to grow one kind of grape, the Grenache, because it needs 300 liters of water per kilo of grapes instead of the others of 800, 900, explaining scarcity of water, resources, educating people, because they also come and say, where can I go, what can I learn? Because this is a funny thing. People like to learn something new, which is off the beaten track, and all of a sudden having a wine tasting, which is not about, it's about the wine, but it's also about sustainability. And you have people say, I like this, I really like to follow this, I really like to see what's coming next, which other project you have, where you're going to actually educate me a little bit.
And what's the strategy for Kempinski when it comes to loyalty?
Well, I would start from loyalty today is a financial paragraph on the balance sheet of a company, because we've realized that in a data-driven world, having loyal guests is worth a lot of money, which is why some large databases are worth more than hotel companies. But if we now start looking a little bit on the side of the guest, we see that there is a little bit of a disconnect. So I remember when one day we were making an example in working on a loyalty program, and I told a story about a man dying, and and the wife asking him, "Have you been faithful to me?" And he answers, "Frequently." Because that is the reality of loyalty today. Nobody is only loyal to one brand, because there is the functional aspect, there is the destination aspect. And in a world like today, particularly in hotel spaces, you will never be able to give full loyalty, to a brand, because you will look at other things. So if I'm thinking now on the side of a guest, for me a guest is a loyal guest the moment when they choose, they really think, I want to be in a Kempinski. I don't want to be in an hotel. I want to be in a Kempinski. And that means that you've done a very good job as a brand, and that you've created a personalized connection with that customer. So I'm personally, I think that in probably 10 years, we will not have loyalty programs anymore. We might have rewards program. Rewards program are amazing, but rewards fostered to Anant's point, they're very, very good and enforcing existing behaviors. While if you really want to create that brand connection at a different level, it's a different type of program.
I think it's a really interesting point you make, because, as some of you might know this, but we won't mention by names, but some really large hotel brands can enjoy up to 65, even 70%, depending on the market, but usually in the US, bookings coming from their loyalty programs. This is predominantly, and it's not necessarily mass market brands as well, so some of them are more premium. So I guess, it's very much kind of a regional thing, but also it works for some brands, right? Because those brands resonate with certain types of customers. But for other brands, what I'm hearing is you have a very different view about the loyalty. You want to actually focus on what the brand offers, on the experience that guests have, on the emotional connection with the brand. And it's less about sort of collecting the points or booking through the app, for the loyalty app, or it's more about actually creating different interactions.
I want to make sure that I underline, there is a huge space for rewards program. We are proud partners of the Global Hotel Alliance, but it works different mechanics from what is fostering loyalty with single specific individuals.
Super interesting. I want to shift gears now a little bit to talk about personalization and how do we operationalize it, I suppose. So we did a very interesting project for a luxury hotel brand. As part of that project, we looked at how to improve guest experience. And we tested 25 different options across all of the age groups and different geographies of the customer base. And we found that the biggest opportunities in how to increase the guest experience lied actually in the booking phase of guest experience. So 3 key drivers have emerged, and one is people saying, I want to be able to customize my experience when I make the booking, because to me it's very important that the brand understands me as a guest, values me as for example, a repeat guest. Second option was booking exclusive offers from the brand. So again, it's that exclusive experience that maybe the brand can create or facilitate in that specific location. And also choosing a specific room when they book on the app or on the website. There was also a biggest detractor, and that actually relates to technology. I don't know if you think about it and if you can guess it, but it was that people would absolutely hate, and I use the word hate because it was that strong in the research, they would not want any kind of tracking, facial recognition to be used on them on or off property in order to personalize the experience. People felt it violated their personalized space and experience and privacy, and that was absolute no-go. It's quite interesting because when you hear some of the, people who want to talk about innovation and bringing sort of the facial scanners into hotel properties, they might actually advocate for a very different thing. And I think this is where you really need to kind of follow the data, follow your instincts perhaps, and follow your experience, with the guests. So I know, Barbara, that Kempinski has passed forward, right? So bringing the brand DNA to the forefront. Are you actually thinking about how you employ technology to create, to operationalize, I suppose, that personalization for people? Or do you have a very different view on these things? And what do you want to do for Kempinski?
Thank you. So I'm actually very humbly looking at with Ave at the brand that I've been privileged enough to be the custodian of for a very short period of time of the life of the brand, because Kempinski is the oldest hospitality company in the world. It was founded in 1862. And this is why we called this year Past Forward, because we can only define how will Kempinski be relevant to the customer of today if we look back and really see how have we been relevant for all these years. Because at the end of the day, the reason why heritage brands are typically worth much more than new brands is because time is the ultimate quality control. So if you've done something right for so many years, you're doing something right. So in the specificity of Kempinski, the first investment that I brought in was get archivists, because you need to understand what has this brand done. And this is where we are like, okay, this is really interesting, because Kempinski has invented most of the features that today we consider normal in hospitality. It was the first company to offer wine by the glass. We opened the first resort in the world in Potsdam in 1932. It was the first hotel that was actually to enjoy yourself and not just to sleep. We invented aperitif. So thinking about all of these history of innovation, we are today thinking in what Anand was calling declutter, this incredible growth. Since 2019, I'm reading that the numbers of rooms with an ADR of about $1,000 a day has tripled. So there is all of this growth, all of this movement, all of this clutter. How can this brand be relevant for the customer tomorrow at the same time without losing really that root to the past? And this is where it will be innovation, but I don't believe that technology will be the magic wand that will resolve it all. You know, for me, technology is always the solution to a customer need or desire. And if we start from the technology, we'll never get there. There is huge opportunity in technology, but where we can still innovate is really in thinking about, okay, what is the hotel of today? What should the role be? Because maybe we should venture a little bit outside of the door. Maybe we should help that guest a little bit before and after it gets in our palace. You know, maybe we should, as a hospitality brand, play a different role. These are the questions that we're asking ourselves now.
Absolutely. What about Banyan tree?
There was a saying a long time ago, high touch, low tech, right? And we all applied it, but we need tech. We need to be innovative, but we need to make sure that it doesn't become transactional, that you don't get an AI voice of how can I assist you. People don't like this. And, you know, affluent travelers also usually have either their PAs or lifestyle managers. I mean, they're screening your stuff and they call. And they want to know, how do you react? And they do a fake call before they do the real call. And then you have the customer. And when you get hooked and when you be able to literally manually convert a booking in very fast time, they know you are on game.
Absolutely. So basically, put the AI and tech at the back of the house.
Put it in back. Yeah. Of course, you need the comfort of it, and it's very nice to have, but you need to tone it down, especially to the front-facing.
Anna, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's got to start with the storyboard that you're delivering your guests, and then, you know, how you can either make it more efficient or more delightful. And it really is as simple as that. You know, one person's technology-enabled experience is another's worst nightmare. Right? I mentioned Sitters Nem earlier. You know, their promise is to invest what would have been the square footage for the ironing board into the quality of the mattress. Their premise is to invest what would have been, like a highly human-led service experience into, you know, digital check-in kiosks that they took inspiration from the airline industry from. And that works because their promise still appeases high net worths. And when they're looking for that functional experience where they don't have to interact and they can get on with what they're doing and, you know, have a good co-working space to prepare for a meeting or such like. But, you know, and so there's not one answer to these things, but it's got to start with, what is the storyboard that I'm designing for my guest, and how can technology then effectively enable that storyboard in a more delightful way? Or similarly, how can AI create operational efficiency? You know, reduce food waste. There's great startups like Winnow that like analyze, you know, food usage and things that are disposed of, and then help you optimize how you then, you know, buy and do things like decrease waste. But, you know, those are two different aspects of how, you know, I think tech can help.
Amazing. We've got a few minutes left for the audience questions. So I can already see some hands up. So if we could get a microphone over, if you can please introduce yourself and your company. And also if the question is for everyone on the panel or just one specific person.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Good morning and compliments to the speakers. My name is Otto König. I'm co-founder of Consume Technologies. We are launching a universal food ID platform where guests securely share their food preferences and dietary needs, enabling hotels to know their customers a little bit better and tailor specialized experiences for their guests. I would like to know from the panel if you could maybe a little bit elaborate on, in terms of defining luxury, your idea of a balance when it comes to the equipment, the place of the hotel, the beds, and the location on one side versus like knowing your customers on the other side. Where is like the balance here from your point of view? Thank you very much.
I'm happy to try. This is a very charged question. I think it depends from each brand. because each brand needs to take their own decision. To Anant's point, some brands might decide to be very technology driven, and because that's what they are standing for. In luxury, as Peter was also saying, very often is about the specific interaction with the colleague that is serving you at that moment. And this is where my personal gut feeling is that for luxury hotels and luxury hospitality, it is better if technology plays a back-end role versus a front-end role. But that's my personal view for Kempinski.
I think you really should always aspire to know your guest in the luxury industry as much as possible in a way that's not creepy and invasive, and choose the level of personal service that you feel suitable for your brand. There are some brands which they have like a highly operationalized way of delivering human service, and there are others who are very purpose-led, and they try and empower people on the front line to bring their personality every day to how they deliver service, and that's not appropriate in other situations. So I think it's like the same goes for technology. What is the mode of it all that works for you?
Yeah, I agree. And again, when the technology becomes the forefront on a service in front of a guest, I think we're creating very robotic kind of experiences, because the staff usually needs to catch up on the technology, but forgets to actually have the eye contact of the guest, have the interaction. Again, a good waiter doesn't need a menu. He knows how to sell it. He doesn't need that. When you go to system gastronomy, is a very different thing. When you go to mainstream hotels, of course, and you want to be very profitable in a hotel restaurant, I think this is a very good idea. But one more time, when it becomes transactional, it's no more luxury. And I think this sounds almost old-fashioned, but it's not, because this is what people are looking for, the non-transactional interactions.
Sorry. I was just going to say every interaction is an opportunity to build value. And value is built in bizarre ways. They did some behavioral experiments, and when people can hear the cork pop, the wine is rated 15% better. When there are two chocolate cakes given to someone, and one's called satin chocolate cake and the other's just called chocolate cake, there's a 20% increase in flavor profile. It's like this. We all kind of know this stuff deep down. It's sort of obvious, but it's very easy to forget it when we're trying to optimize and digitize and basically create a more efficient delivery of service. So I just think rather than what are the interactions we can get rid of, it's like how can we redefine or redesign those interactions so they feel beautifully unique and an expression of promise. And so I think that's important to think about. Is that me?
Somebody cut us off.
It's probably a sign that we actually are done for the time. So thank you so much, the panel. As you can see, you can talk to them the whole day, but please, a round of applause for a fantastic panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Superb. Thank you. That was fantastic.